Voice check. Hello, universe. Can anyone hear me? Hey, everybody, and welcome. I guess I can kill the text. We're all here. Scroll, intro text, and off. So, I brought notes today. A few things to talk about. How's everybody doing tonight? Hope everybody's having a great time. This is Maxsmodels calling the universe. Let's see. All right, gang's all piling in. Well, so many cool things to talk about today, and then of course we'll probably just wind up talking about whatever you guys want to. Sorry. I had a chat with my brother earlier. He might call in. I don't know how many of you guys saw this morning's video, but I was talking about tiny armor, and I've got my notes right here, John. You will notice I'm not appearing on screen at the moment yet. I was thinking, although I am here and I do have the camera turned on, that I would, unless you guys want otherwise, I rely a little more on imagery than my smiling face. I usually have myself tucked in the corner, but yeah, there we go. Got some guys here in Florida down at Canaveral, SFS. Was that Space Flight System or something? Or for those who don't know, and I did the tour a long time ago, you're probably all familiar with Kennedy Space Center. Canaveral Air Station is next door. They are two separate facilities. They each have their own runway. One's Air Force, one's NASA. And by the way, there's no such place as Cape Kennedy. There's Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral. That's right. Of course, Space Force now. I'm sorry. Apologies. There's something I kind of want to say, but I'm not going to go there. I saw a Space Force article today, and it had absolutely nothing to do with Space Force or anything they're doing. It had to do with some of the completely non-related stuff the media loves to latch on to do, and that's all I have to say about that. So, go Space Force. All right. So, I mentioned in this morning's broadcast that I had once built a 1/72nd scale Hasegawa tank. Now, my brother called me this afternoon. The first words out of his mouth, "Are you stealing my childhood again?" I'm like, well, yeah, that's what it's there for. I can't harass you in person, so I'll just steal your memories. So, let's just jump right into that, and let me see if I can find this picture here. I just threw up a slideshow, some pictures I took today of the B-25. We're going to come back to that later. So, okay. Hit the wrong button. There it is. There we go. These are sent in by Tom P. And these are images of very small scale model tanks, 176 and 172nd. And that's kind of his thing. He actually runs that, was it BC Cast? He casts a lot of these things himself. So, John, he does with tanks what you do with cars. And that one's a wargaming modeling size. But, thanks. This t-shirt came from Scratchy up in Connecticut. And he's got my name on the back. That was in the video. And it got, you can't really see it, but it got right there, christened today with gray paint, which was in the slide. Captain Tangent here, sailing off in another direction. I was actually getting ready to go get dinner for me and my wife. I don't know if you guys caught my little commercial about a half hour ago, but I was just closing everything up and had some gray paint and screwed the lid. And it literally shot out of hand, coated my arm, caught the shirt, shot off on the floor. And what are you going to do? You know? So you just clean up as fast as you can. It was an excuse to jump in the convertible and go out to Wendy's and grab some food real quick. And we just ate, and now, ta-da-ta-da, here we are. So, getting back to tanks, model tanks. So, The tank, this is just a still picture, but where was that little tank picture? I got behind it. I was doing so many things, so I didn't have a chance to get terribly well organized. Not that organization is a strength. Okay, this is from the viewer's build, and I believe that is a 1/72nd scale Stuart. And this is the kit that my brother and I built, and there's, like I said earlier, there's a story behind that. So it's the Hasegawa kit, and just to give you an idea how tiny that thing is, there's the picture I was looking for. Just for those who have never seen a 1/72nd scale Stuart tank, it'll fit on a spoon. So this tank is the very first kit my brother ever bought from the squadron shop. Mine was a 1/72nd scale Airfix 01 Bird Dog that came in a bag. And I built that thing, never painted it, just played with it until literally it fell apart. So the story behind this is we never ordered from, we both always liked the Stuart. One reason is a local junkyard, a guy named Hootie Paramore, and I don't know what his real name was, but he went by Hootie Paramore, owned a salvage yard. He had a lot of old military equipment in there, which is not terribly uncommon in the Deep South. And stuff rusts away pretty. He had an old, the Flying Banana, I think it's the H-21, I believe it was a Shawnee helicopter, the big piston engine, radial engine Flying Banana. He had one of those out in front that we used to go in and play on every chance we got. It had a full cockpit in it and everything. Of course, parts have been pirated out by other souvenir hunters and people buy stuff off of it. But it sat out there for years. He'd buy these derelicts as junk, and one day he had an early model, like you see in the picture, M3 Stuart tank, and man, we couldn't climb on that thing fast enough. And I don't know, we're 8, 9, 10 years old. We played on that thing, and it had rusted edges and it's amazing we didn't end up. You just bathing in tetanus. It's amazing we didn't like cutting ourselves and getting infected or something, or did we? But so when came time, a few years later, we decided to get a model. My younger brother decided to get a model Stuart tank, and the first thing he ordered from the squadron shop, and we may have ordered at the same time when I got the Bird Dog. But anyway, he got the tank. He was so excited, but he didn't, he was like 9 years old. I was probably 12. And he didn't stop to think about, how tiny this thing would be. I don't think he even caught that it was 1/72nd. He knew it was 1/72nd. Well, the planes are pretty small, but, tanks are a lot smaller than airplanes. And he was actually, the boxes, beautiful. The box art was what sold him. He even told me that day, the box art was absolutely what sold him. And that's some excellent box art. And I think one of the things that's great about it is it paints a picture. These guys are clearly, making the advance on patrol somewhere in the Pacific, judging by the palm trees. But it's not one of these trumped up action scenes. It's actually, you can almost feel the tension of them. They got their heads on the swivel, waiting for some, Japanese soldier to come bonsaiing out there with one of those bamboo stick charges that crack a tank in half. So anyway, he gets the tank, and when he opens the box and sees how small everything, he got pretty frustrated. He actually got a little ticked off, and he was definitely disappointed. He was expecting something bigger than that. So I think he might have started it, but he asked me if I wanted to build it because the parts are so tiny. And even when we had sharp eyesight of kids, that thing I turned it into a glue bomb, but it was so small you could hardly tell. Our attitude was with armors, any glue stains are just battle damage. And so, you can barely hear me. Okay, let me turn the gain up a little bit. Oh, I had it turned down for something else. Any better? Is that any better? I'll project. Okay, I'll turn up a little more. We need to hear you better. Oh, there he is. Speak of the devil. WKRP, you're on the air.
Hey, are you on a delay?
Well, it's about a 7-second delay or 8-second delay from when I say something till I see it come back on the YouTube feed. So it's only about I can't stop it. If you say it, I have no way of intercepting it.
Oh, okay.
So watch your mouth. So, were you watching?
Oh yeah, we're watching it, but I have to turn the audio down.
Well, yeah, because otherwise I'll get a feedback. Anyway, this is my brother on the phone. Careful, he's a lawyer. And so anyway, he's the one that got the tank, and we built it. And I think I pretty much already told the story.
Yeah, I caught part of it. that was essentially it. It was a really, really nice box art, but it was a really small kit. And I was probably about 10 or 11.
That means I'd have 12. So I'd have been 13 or 14. It was before I went to military school, so I wasn't 14 yet.
Yeah. And best year of my life.
Year I went to military school, yeah.
And finally my own room.
Yeah, but, I shared mine with 300 total strangers.
Yeah. But, no, I just...
All of who thought I looked awfully pretty.
I distinctly remember getting that thing because I'd ordered it from Squadron Shop, which I never ordered anything from Squadron Shop, hardly. And not that it had very much money. But
people are saying hello to you in the comment section.
Yeah, and then I remember coming in and opening it up and going, oh, man. We opened it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, like a matchbox.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I spent a year at Marion Military Institute because I always wanted to go to military school until I went to one. And I was like, well, that was not what I expected. I didn't realize they sent all the social rejects there. I thought it was military school, not reform school. And I met half those guys again when I joined the real army. Like, yeah, what do you know? Bully and loop.
Was that in Selma or near Selma?
Yeah, it was in Marion, Alabama, which I think 11 or 14 miles from Selma. Yeah, that's Selma.
Okay.
And it was...
there was an airfield there, Craig Field or something?
Craig Field, which was an active Air Force undergraduate pilot training base when I was there in T-33s. Well, they had a T-33 on a pedestal. They were mostly using T-37s by then. And, wow, T-37s, T-38s may be small jets, but they are freaking loud. Yeah. And they closed it down not long after I left. They had a T-33 as a gate guard. Every time I'd go by there, it was painted different. One time I went home on a weekend, and there were a bunch of GIs out there with their wives and coolers of beer and everything. Apparently, painting the gate guard was kind of a monthly or whatever tradition.
Yeah, I think it's still there because about 12, 13 years ago, my wife and I were coming to Florida, and we passed it, and it's still there.
Yeah, it's just an airport and industrial park now.
Oh,
holy crap, we got 95 viewers. Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm officially an influencer.
That's probably the only Hasegawa kit I probably ever had.
Well, I didn't have a chance to make that chart we talked about. And folks, my brother and I talked about making a chart. And I don't know if you guys ever seen a lift over drag chart, but you got one curved line that shows lift, another curved line goes the other way, it shows drag. And when you're dead center in the middle, you're at your best, most efficient point on an airplane, lift over drag, LWD max. Well, we were talking about making one of those for model companies, and we figured monogram went right in the center. Why don't you go ahead and tell them the way you described it? It had the best, overall.
It had the best combination of quality, fit, finish, price, ease of build. It kind of hit a real sweet spot for, a 13 or 14 or 12-year-old kid who's putting models together.
Which means, to me, it would be way up on the high side of expensive but powerful. Hasegawa would be expensive but okay. And I still think Hasegawa was a little overpriced, to be honest. They want to be Tamiya, so they price like Tamiya, and they make excellent kits, but I'm not sure that they're worth quite what they're starting to ask for them these days. And Aurora and Lindbergh would be on the other end of the spectrum, at least with their military models.
Well, when we were building, we were like 12 or 11 or 12. Tamiya kits actually kind of, because I'd heard about them and the price, they just kind of intimidated me because you heard about how complicated they were. And I got a Tamiya King Tiger 2, and I remember trying to build that thing down in the basement, and it was too complicated for me. It had the little where the crew sat and everything was attached to the turret, and it was held on by like struts.
Mm-hmm.
And it all sunk down into the chassis.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just too complicated for me, and I don't remember what I did with it. I never finished it. I may have just given it to you or something, but I never finished the kit. It was like,
I don't remember a King Tiger. Huh.
And my biggest problem with, of course, I never had a lot of luck with tank kits because I think you and I were talking about this the other day. It's all fine building a tank kit to get to the one, insurmountable obstacle with any tank kit, and that's getting the treads on.
Yeah, and if you don't have metal link tracks, and we were talking about this the other day, I think I broke, including that Atlantis M26 Pershing I recently built. I think I've broken at least one wheel on every model tank I've tried to put a rubber band track on.
Well, I remember us as kids trying to use staples and.
Oh, I don't know what kind of rubber they were using, but you could have used it for space shuttle tiles. It was impervious to glue. Rivets popped out. Staples came loose. Tape wouldn't hold. I mean, we were ready to arc weld those things in place.
Yeah. We finally found out where the last use of vibranium was. It was in those shreds because you couldn't do anything with them. You remember what we used to try to do was heat up an X-Acto knife.
Yeah, and then melt the thing, the little plungers, the little tongs that went up to the holes. You melt in. That's what the instructions said to do. So we very, very, okay, we'll do it. And we would sit there and melt it down. And about 3 seconds later, ping!
And once the tracks broke, whoops, diorama time. We got some knocked out threads.
Mm-hmm. We had a shelf full of knocked out D-track tanks.
You finally give up and just glue them to the... I think you said you did that, didn't you? Just glue them to the wheels?
Oh, yeah, I finally just got frustrated. I did that on that freaking Pershing. I just, screw this. I just glued it to the return rollers.
Yeah. It's like a 40-year recurring nightmare. That was frustrating. I think I was talking the other day about listing like the 3 most irritating parts of model building. One of them is tank treads. The other one of them would have to be any kind of painting of a frame on any kind of canopy,
especially 1/72 scale.
And I think trying to apply a camo pattern.
I just did a lozenge pattern on a D7. Tell me about it.
Yeah. I'm just going to build fighters from the 50s, which are all like bare aluminum.
Well, even that, I've been playing with that Alclad, and it's actually a good aluminum finish can be one of the trickiest ones to get. But speaking of model tanks, I have noticed something of late, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have all seen. You've seen the Chieftain's Hatch, Nick Moran, and in his house, and I'm using this without his permission. I hope he doesn't mind. I got a screen grab of him here. But he's got a whole bunch of tanks, and he did a couple of shows on building model tanks, and he was lamenting the tracks on that also. And on real tanks, how track tension is, the nightmare of every tanker. You can't be a tanker unless you know how to do track tension. And, since we're on tanks, that reminds me of something else, and I think I made a slide for it. We're talking about, okay, where is it? I have to read these little titles I give them. By the way, quick side note, just a quick aside here. I thought, I was wondering something. Did you guys ever get a model, maybe order one, and it wasn't what you expected it to be because of the title? And the thing I had in mind, I'm trying to get this picture down here. Logo. Well, anyway, I was like, Cromwell tank would be great. And I found it was a Cromwell kit, and it turned out to be Oliver Cromwell. And I'm like, thank you, Airfix. It didn't dawn on me that Oliver Cromwell was Oliver Cromwell. I assumed it was Oliver Cromwell tank, I'm American. What do I know about British history?
I had something like that happen. It wasn't a kit model, but I ordered, you remember at the back of the comic books, they had those, you could get that box of toy soldiers.
Remember? You made me gag. Excuse me. I remember you ordered one. Oh boy, was that interesting.
Yeah, it was all, it comes in its own little foot locker. And, it was a little...
100 soldiers and airplanes and tanks. And by the way, they weren't lying. Tell them.
Yeah. No, they were all there, but they were all flat.
They were all these they were plastic, but it was like cardboard cutouts, but they were plastic and they had little stands. And sure enough, there were 100 of these flat little 2-dimensional soldiers and weird looking little airplanes.
Yeah, the airplanes didn't have any tails on them.
Oh yeah.
No vertical stabilizers anyway.
Because everything was 2D.
Yeah. And even at the age of 10 or 11, you realize, kind of like you're Ralphie with the Ovaltine.
What the?
A little wiser, a little more worldly now.
Yeah. But, hey, but we got to admit, we both knew it was $1. We were surprised anything showed up in the mail.
Well, apparently, I don't know if I may have talked about this one time, or I just saw it on YouTube, but Remember the submarine you could order out of the back?
I actually saw a picture of someone on the internet that built one out of cardboard, and it's somewhere in tiny print not to be taken into water.
Yeah, or left out in the rain. Yeah, I mean, it actually didn't look bad. It would have been anything for kids. I mean, our nephew, Christopher, remember how much fun he had with that tank?
Oh, my God. Okay. My nephew's a grown man with a job now. Okay. My older brother made
armor kits.
Yeah, talk about armor kits. My older brother decided to make him a tank. So what he did was he got a cardboard box and painted the outside camouflage and painted tracks on it, put U.S. Army on the side, and told Christopher it was a tank. And Christopher was, what, 2 or 3?
Yeah, and he crawled inside.
He crawled inside and played in that thing for a year.
Well, what he did was, because it was just a box that went around him, as he crawled on it, it rolled.
Yeah. And he was, I mean, it was literally a case of having more fun with the box it came in. You know?
Oh, he loved that thing. And also, the edges of it were corrugated. Because of the box, so they actually looked kind of...
They looked a little bit like tracks and everything. Well, Billy did a good job on it.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Go to war in a cardboard tank. Well, that's not that big a deal. When I look at some of the things, I just did a screen grab today of a vehicle I saw on a documentary. It was okay. Where did that? I just had it a second ago. World War II weird vehicles. Okay, it was the Japanese moving through China, and they had this thing, and I have no idea what this thing is, but it looks like an armor-plated truck, and it looks like they did another one, but that doesn't, I don't know if that's a manufactured item or something they just did in the field. Whatever that is, I've never seen a model of it, and behind them are just regular trucks, so I don't know if it's supposed to be a command car or something they just cobbled together, and
it's like that old security police vehicle the Air Force used to use.
Yeah, the Dodge, yeah. Fastport says Trabant tank's a great idea for East Germany. You know, Trabant's a little East German car. There you go, tank. And, well, it's not a prop because this is actually, somebody thought it looked like a prop. It's not a prop because this is actually a clip from actual captured Japanese footage. Of course, the victorious Japanese driving through, looks like somewhere in China, I would imagine. Of course, they could be on parade in Japan. It's hard to say, but I'm just wondering if that's an actual vehicle that Japanese industry manufactured at military request, but it looks like it could be something some clever Japanese mechanics welded together. It's all slab-sided, looks like thin armor. And it's funny, though, people don't bring up the point much that in the Pacific, the Sherman was the Tiger tank.
Oh, yeah. Well, but it was understandable, and I was watching some on YouTube not long ago. One of these experts was talking about armor and Japanese armor and why it was the way it was, and it made sense at the time why they did things the way they did.
When you look at who they were fighting and where they were fighting, yeah.
It was also there were technology limitations, but there was also real weight limitations.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because just today I watched a half-hour video by the Chieftain. In fact, that's where I did that screen grab. A lot of you guys, I don't know if you guys, y'all know this, how big armor buffs you are, but there's an American company called International Harvester that makes farm equipment, tractors, bulldozers, even some vehicles or road vehicles. And they got contracted to make some tanks right about the time of Pearl Harbor. And it was a tank that never went to production. I've never even seen a kit of, called, I think it was the M7. It was supposed to be a light tank to replace the Stuart. By the time they were done with it, Army specs were changing. They had a medium tank, and they were like, well, heck, we've got the Sherman. We don't need this thing. But it was talking about all the nightmares. In fact, I made some notes on it. You know, we always talk about in model building how the molds are 90% of getting a model company off the ground. You've got to have good molds. And getting good molds is a result of getting good machining and good machinists. So people who know how to mold makers. Well, the Chieftain was talking about that the biggest problem that American industry had, everybody said, oh, America, the arsenal of democracy, we look at all the stuff we made. But the biggest shortage when the war broke out to get these war materials made wasn't the raw material, wasn't the people, it was tools and tool makers, companies that could make the machinery. And he says that, let's see if I got this right, there were 35 tool company manufacturers when the war broke out. That was it, to make all this stuff. By the end of the war, they had made over 300,000 and when I say tools, I don't mean wrenches. I'm talking about big machines. And that he was talking about how there was this race and companies kept stealing qualified machinists from other companies. And International Harvester never built a tank. They were supposed to outsource everything, all the problems with subcontractors who had the same problems getting wheels because they had trouble getting tools. They actually had the raw materials. It was getting the tools and the tool makers and the talent. International Harvester started having to hire and train people to weld, expecting 6 weeks to train them. And they said when they delivered the first tank, the thing the Army was most impressed with was the excellent welding that International Harvester done, including with these new people. They'd really trained them well. But it was getting all the other equipment. Well, a lot of the people couldn't deliver, so they wound up having to make part of their own drivetrain, which they weren't geared up to do, literally. And he just gets into how these problems cascaded on him because there was a hierarchy. Just like you were 1A, you were going to go in the military and be drafted. 4F, you were rejected. Well, businesses had a hierarchy, and there was the Lloyd Commission on Machine Tools, and they determined the priority. And International Harvester was at the bottom because light tanks and new designs were all at the bottom of the heap, and so they couldn't get the tools. And how the guys are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, trying to do something, making what subcomponents they could. And even a lot of the big manufacturers were making what he said he called it shops. A lot of parts were made with what I think called shop skills, which is a nice way of saying a lot of it was handmade. So,
it's interesting too because it's not Cheaton. There was someone else I was watching about. Who was that fella? He was with the Army. It was like the History Channel. He was with the Army Armor Museum or something.
Oh, I think I know the guy you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of a heavy-set fella. I think he's deceased.
Yeah, he does all the small arms and everything. He was actually a lieutenant in Vietnam.
Well, he was talking about how in the U.S. we gave tank building to car companies, but in Germany it was given to heavy equipment manufacturers.
Yeah, yeah.
And you think about it, he goes, when we produced, 40,000 Shermans?
48,000.
Produced 1,300, Tiger 1s.
Yeah.
And not just a few hundred Tiger 2s, I guess. And 5,000 Panthers and about 6,000 Mark 4s.
Mm-hmm.
We're putting out like 40,000 Shermans. And how many T-34s did the Russians build? 40 or 50,000? 30,000. It was just...
But he did, if you guys are at all interested in armor history, I really recommend you watch his description of the Sherman tank, why it was what it was. It really changed my view of the Sherman tank. I think it's probably the best tank of World War II, not for any one specific thing, but as a general tank. And remember, only the Sherman and the Matilda II are the only two tanks to fight in every theater on every continent except Antarctica. Because the Shermans had to be operating in the Pacific, in the frozen north, it is just everywhere, in the deserts, and they did well. The Matilda did fairly well too. But it was we
had a model kit of a Matilda.
Mm-hmm. You remember the name I gave it?
Yours.
Yeah, it was.
Was that a Tamiya?
I think it was. One of my first Tamiya kits was a Matilda 2, and you had two name options. You could call it the Phantom or the Badger. I like both of them, so I called it the Phantom Badger.
Yeah. I remember that. It was tan colored.
Yeah, it was in desert scheme.
Yeah. And then you had that, I remember that, I guess it was a Grant. Or was it a Lee? No, it was a Lee, I think.
It was the American.
You put the diorama with the 132nd scale P40.
Mm-hmm. Because being 5% off scale never bothered me. 132, 132nd, just put them a little far apart from each other.
Well, even there, I noticed. I was like, man, that tank sure does look small next to that airplane. And like I said, the pallet was. I guess the pallet was a little bigger, but
yeah,
that wasn't that big of a scale.
That's okay. He was the only two-piece figure in the whole thing. So, what was the other thing? So small tanks, to me, are extremely frustrating and very difficult, and I think they're more difficult than small airplanes.
Well, it's funny because I've only built a handful of armored kits, and the last tank model I built was in 1988 at Altus Air Force Base when I was going through 141 training.
Yeah.
I had a lot of downtime, and I didn't have any transportation there, and so I walked over to the base exchange and got a model kit. And I think it was a 172nd scale, might have been a 180 scale of an M1 Abrams.
Well, that would have been a pretty new kit back then.
Yeah, built it right there in the room, and even painted it. I was just kind of doing like some, like green lines and brown lines, kind of a paint job on it or whatever. And it finished up. Actually, it was a pretty nice little job I did on it. It wasn't anything fancy, and I just left it in the room for whoever had to stay there next when I left.
Because every Air Force officer wants a model tank in his room.
Yeah, built out of boredom.
Well, a lot of those hulls are still in service, and no matter how many times they've been remanufactured, I don't think they built a new actual Abrams from the ground up in a long time. Well, the other thing I was going to talk about was rare kits. I had found this picture of the Guerrilla Combat Team, which was actually the Matador Mace Zell launcher with a F-84 on it. And I went around on YouTube and eBay and a few other places just to see if I could find one. Now, when I say rare kits, I don't mean expensive kits, or I'm talking about kits you just can't find, regardless of the price. And the Guerrilla Combat Team, guys, if you happen to stumble onto one that's complete and it's at a decent price, I'd recommend you just grab it, because apparently they didn't make that many of them, and it's just one of those oddities. I think it's cool, but what I love is it's not even that it's a Zell launcher, it's that it's the Guerrilla Combat Team, F-84E aircraft, M52 tractor, trailer, and launcher. And, give Hawk credit. They're really trying to move the thing. But I was like, the Guerrilla Combat Team, do you understand what a guerrilla is? I mean, what are they, inside Russia launching this thing? But I looked at a lot of other rare kits that were not, that were just really hard to find stuff. And the ones that I've got in this picture are just a handful of ones that I stumbled across. And some of them are common models, like the B-25, but finding that old Ladello B-25 that's in the upper left, good luck on finding something that rare. The ITC kits, it's a handful of the Aurora kits. They are just, some of the old Hawk kits, they're hen's teeth. They're unicorn braids.
We were discussing this earlier. Somebody could give you a one of 5 ever produced shrink wrap plastic models, and I think you're ripping into it building it.
That was actually where I was going to go with this. And I've told the glue troopers this many times. I'm a builder. And the ITC Ideal Toy Company, a lot of their molds did end up with Glencoe, but only some of them are reproduced. If you hand me one of those, and John's pointing out they're rare slot car kits. I'm sure there are. I don't know if the things are rare because they didn't make many of them, or because they made a lot of them, they all got destroyed. But
Max, it's like that Star Trek. The actor said in that Star Trek fan film in the episode "What Ships Are For." There's an old saying: "A ship in the harbor is safe," but that's not what ships are for.
Yeah, exactly.
Models are meant to be built.
Well, it's like Kirk. Supposedly the greatest speech he ever gave in Star Trek was the one where he talks about that's what this risk is, what this ship is all about.
That's right.
And he invokes Apollo and the others, and but that boils down to there's two questions: what makes it not what makes a kit rare, why is a kit rare, and what is it actually worth? Because you can see a rare kit that was made in limited run, but it was made in limited run because nobody wants it, and nobody still wants it. It might be rare, but that doesn't mean it's worth very much. At the same time, you can see something that was made in the millions, but if there's only a handful left and people loved them, then you've got something that's worth a lot of money. There was a lot of these I got from eBay, and some from oldmodelkits.com and some from ScaleMates, but a lot of these kits, you just can't find them. The only Aurora Russian nuclear bomber I have ever found on eBay was already built, and I almost bought it anyway. I figured I'll just scrub it down, repaint it because it was old and yellowed. The ITC Thor missile base kit, there's a guy getting like $30 just for a reproduction box for that thing, or artwork. I mean, it's a thing you crank the handle, and all the ITC kits had some sort of play value. The Hawk 3 rocket missile thing, and the F-108 Rapier, that one's rare as antique. The only person I know that even has one is Alan Urey over at Fantastic Plastic, and that's kind of the crown, the jewel of the crown in his collection. And now some of these have been repopped, and I have no problem getting a repop, But it's like somebody, a viewer of the channel sent me that Beta 1 model, and which is another super rare kit, which I'd always wanted. And I probably would never have bought that as a kid, but now as an adult, hey, that actually is kind of cool. And they sent me one. I am going to build it at some point. But the whole debate boils down to is there are collectors and there are builders. Now, I'm a builder. And I totally understand that there is a value to be had in owning something without building, having it in the cello and having it in mint condition. There's just like having a fine wine, there's absolutely value in that. And the heart and soul of this channel is enjoying models, whether it's collecting them or building them. The point is you're enjoying it. If you're deriving pleasure from, look, I took the convertible out today to make a Wendy's run just to get us dinner because I just wanted to ride in the convertible. And when I went out in the garage, I just sat there and it's an '07. It's not even a rare car, but I just sat there looking at it in the garage as just enjoy just having it as well as driving it. So, but I'm a builder. So if you send me a kit, if you're like, this is a masterpiece and must never be built, don't send it to Maxsmodels because it will sniff the glue. Oh, well, I did not mean that way. There I am, go talking myself into a corner again. Hey, that's my superpower. But one thing about the old kits is if you do build them, you are going to have to fix the decals on them or get new ones. And I have used decal film, and a lot of people don't appreciate, just how hard it is to make decals. I mean, that is a major undertaking. On the picture on the right is a decal making machine. I finally found a picture of one, and you can tell it is a very involved process. And when they're done with everything, you got to let them dry. So that's why decals are so expensive. Plus the time to make the artwork. Although I often just use clear coat. And a lot of decals are good for an amazing length of time. I actually used the decals that came with the B25, and they've held up better than the plastic has.
Well, you remember the walls of the downstairs bathroom became the land of leftover decals.
So does the walls of the Tarbus. I'm doing that in.
Yeah, remember we just stick them on the bathroom wall.
Oh yeah. If you guys had gone to the house we grew up in and gone to the downstairs bathroom, which had this cheap wood paneling, it just had leftover model airplane decals everywhere.
Well, we had to do something after our two oldest sisters, when they lived down there, had painted flowers all over the walls.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the 70s. We had to just kind of militarize it a little bit.
Nothing like a big floral paint job with lots of little, iron balcony crosses and stars and Hinamaroos all over it, And we always got them on upside down too. Oh, speaking of upside down decals, that reminds me. There was something I promised to talk about and forgot last time, but here it is. Hold on, let me get these other two out of the way. Okay. Does anybody notice anything wrong with this B25? And I'll wait a second and let you look at it. I'll just wait to see the comment section here. Wait, who catches it first? No prizes except the glory of knowing you were the first one.
Yeah, the star's upside down.
Ah, you got it.
What do you call that? A randle? A randle?
A randle.
Roundel.
Well, the star and bars, if you notice on the fuselage, this is off of an Airfix B25, an old one. This is like the vintage kit, the earliest one they did, and the H and the J. And for some reason, the artist got the fuselage. Yeah, Mike caught it. There goes, Claire caught it. Yeah, everybody's catching now. I said, yeah, Raymond, is it a distress signal? Hey, I didn't think about that. But I'm guessing that got past everybody. It went to the printer, and when they found it, screw it, we're not going to print another 10,000 sheets.
That wasn't the problem. Imagine how many kids wound up putting the decal on.
That's what I was wondering, how many kids put the decal on upside down.
How's your 148 Mitchell coming?
Well, here, I'll run the thing for you again. It's actually coming out pretty good. These are the... I had a little accident with the paint today, which got on my shirt and splattered my arm. But let me show you the photos I took just before I came out here.
Is that a Revell / monogram?
Yes, that's an old Revell kit. It's from that one. That one should be a mid-70s issue. And I did not appreciate how big of a gap that tail was going to leave when I got it fit in place. Um, and I don't know if I have the picture there or not. If it is, I did something that I. Okay, now you see how that engine nacelle looks good? The cheat line, everything's just right. Well, wait till you see the other side. And that's the good one. I had mounted the nacelle, the cowling to the nacelle. That one's way off. I had mounted the cowling to the nacelle and taped them together. To spray paint. Oh, and I dropped that little freaking top canopy. I sat down and it literally rolled off the table the way you see it, like a dime, and broke the barrel off. There's where I dropped the paint. I was trying to jumped out of my hand, and
man, you're taking some hits there, Max.
there's where it got on the shirt that Scratchy sent me. Well, the shirt's been officially christened now.
I didn't know you were a Vulcan.
But anyway, so what happened was when I had the nacelles all taped together and got the cheat lines lined up, what I didn't realize was I didn't have it on the wing at the time, and I had the nacelles out of alignment. I didn't have them rotated into the right place. So I did the right technique. I just didn't set it up properly. But
make a note. Get Max a bib.
I actually got one down there with all the paint thinners and everything. I actually have an apron. Sometimes I clip it to the table to catch all the parts I'm about to. You see there, you can see the gap on that tail. I mean, this has got a 1970s fit to it. It's got a fit and finish on par with the mid-1970s American-made car. But
is that the one that's got the barbette underneath?
Well, it does. And it's funny you should mention that because the Doolittle Raiders removed it, and they have the plate that goes in there, but the plate doesn't fit very well. And I was disappointed. Then I realized, and guys, if you build this old Revell kit and you want to make a Doolittle Raider and you're going to put that belly plate in there instead of the barbette that hung underneath on the B&C model or C&D model, word-wise, you have to put, you don't have to put the gun barbette in there, but you do have to put the floor piece that the barbette mounted to, because that's what holds that plate in place. So I wound up having to use tape and friction fit it and seal it and everything, and it's kind of the ugly part of the airplane. Fortunately, it's on the bottom. So I did reshoot the cowlings in gray. So I'm going to retrim them and hit them tomorrow. I'm almost out of olive drab spray, so got about 2 shots left.
The cowling, that's not a flight of the Phoenix.
Oh, by the way, yeah.
Hey, why don't you build a kit of that? It doesn't have to line up.
I can put a little dead Ernest Borgnine berry beside it, and oh god, this went dark all of a sudden. But the model.
I'm not to get off the phone here, but
all right.
Enjoying it. Take care.
I'll talk to you later. All right, bye bye. I thought he'd never leave. Oh, what was I? Forgot what I was. Where's my camera? There we go. And I'm back. I turned off my. Not that one. There we go. So, that upside down star bar I think Paul in New Zealand I'd promised I'd mention it, and I forgot last week, so I made a note of it this week. See, I have notes, John. I have notes. AMT. That was the other thing. Did I grab the slide? Yes, I did. Where is it? Get down here. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Guys, if you do make your own decals, there was one thing I wanted to point out about. First off, make sure you use the paper that is specific to your type of printer. They make it for lasers. They make it for inkjets, and it's very important you get the right kind and follow the steps. Be patient with it. You can get some pretty good decals. The only problem I've come across is when you do make a decal on white paper and you trim it out, sometimes there's a white edge around the edge of the thing, and I've seen some guys use paint or marker to darken it just so it doesn't stand out. And make sure to give the clear coat plenty of time I've made a lot of decals for a lot of models, and it's really fun. You can come up with some great stuff, and I know a lot of folks that have done it too. They scanned and replaced decals that were old and bad, and that's a really good option over trying to salvage some of these things when they're gone too bad. But this microscale liquid decal film seems to work fairly well. I try to use just clear coat. That works best. That way the decal stays independent. If you use that liquid film, you're going to have to cut the edge of the decal out because, it puts a new film on it. And it's not a guarantee. If the decal's too far gone, it may still be a lost cause. But, yeah, read the notes, absolutely. I just want to touch on that. There was, let's see. This one? Nope. This one? Nope. I wonder if I didn't attach it. Rear kits, decal filmed. Okay, let me grab it real quick. I know I had it in here, man. It drives me nuts when I do silly stuff like that. Oh, you know what? Was it in rare kits? Nope. Okay. Let me grab it real quick. There was, let's see, image. Okay, browse. Ah, there it is. Okay. I don't know if any of you guys remember this kit. We were talking about rare kits. I don't know if any of you guys remember this kit, but I seem to remember seeing this on the shelf, and I want to say it was in the 70s. Now, I've actually seen the real Budweiser Clydesdales on parade in Tallahassee. I think it was Northwood Mall. Anyway, and they're impressive, to be sure. But when this kit came out, I didn't really have any interest in it. I have no idea what that kit would be worth today. But I think it was a specialty limited run, probably a promotional kind of thing. I'm guessing Budweiser probably paid to have it made. But AMT made it. And, well, I don't know if they made it originally. But the thing it reminded me of, well, I was looking at AMT and I was thinking about rare kits, and AMT is not really known for rare kits. They didn't sell much outside the U.S. A lot of their stuff's still in production. This might be an exception to that, but I stumbled onto this. Oh, it was that one. Okay. This is an AMT M60A1 patent tank in 1/72nd scale. In fact, this is browsing, this is the one that triggered the entire 1/72nd scale tank thing to begin with. And I'm like, I don't ever remember AMT making a patent tank. Well, it turns out they kind of did and they kind of didn't. It's a repop of an Eschi kit, but this was after AMT Ertl. So I'm sure, and it didn't come out till like the 80s or the 90s. So I'm pretty sure that Ertl was behind that, not AMT. So it was a little hard to dig up a little background. They also made a 1/72nd scale M113. By the way, side note, this is the first track vehicle I ever got to ride in when I was in boot camp in the Army, AIT down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I was amazed how smooth that thing was. Tracked vehicles ride surprisingly smooth, or at least that one did. But then I found out that it was actually just a repop of an Eschi kit. And I was thinking, who on God's green earth builds 1/72nd scale armor? But then I realized the 1/76 scale, which I think was a 00 scale, in the UK is very popular, or in Europe is very popular because of model railroading. 1/72nd scale would have the advantage, although it's small, it would have the advantage, you can put a lot of armor on a shelf, it just doesn't eat up a lot of space, and I don't know how expensive they are. Eschi seemed to be the go-to people for that. And the first armor vehicle I ever got in, ever, was an M551 Sheridan that was at a military thing they were trying to, of course, it was at the high school, so all the kids, because they're trying to get kids interested in joining the military. I had no idea that, like the M113, it had aluminum armor. A few years ago, not even that long ago, a couple of years, a year and a half ago, I'm out at the RC field. Turns out one of the safety officer out there is an old M551 Sheridan guy. Well, to run loop back to that, my brother, the one we were just chatting with, was in Operation Just Cause, and he dropped an M551 Sheridan to the 82nd Airborne Division. I didn't even know any of those were still in the inventory. This is basically a lightweight tank / reconnaissance vehicle with aluminum armor, because that always works out well. But because of the light weight, it was airdroppable. So the 82nd Airborne Division held on to about 8 of them, probably till after the turn of the century, because they had nothing to replace them with. And so there's a little bit of armor history for you. But I always thought, aluminum armor, you've got to be kidding me. But the whole idea is this thing is, people talk about how this thing can't take a hit from an RPG or anything and survive. And I was like, you got to remember, these things aren't designed to survive. They're just designed to give the troops some protection so they can get the battlefield. They're not really designed to go into the fight. And when they made the Bradley, they said, okay, let's make something that can go into the fight. But the way they rigged it up, this thing can actually carry more people and more equipment. Although the Bradley can fight more, so they changed the name from Armored Personnel Carrier to Bradley Fighting Vehicle, Armored Fighting Vehicle. This is an Armored Personnel Carrier. You go driving that into the fight, you're begging for trouble. And the driver sits right beside the engine. I'm just like, man, that's a job I don't want. Nice thing about being in an air assault division, you didn't have to do track maintenance. But 1/72nd scale armor seems to be a niche thing, but the people who do it really love it, and it's very popular. 176, I think, is one that Tom, I think, was saying was popular for wargaming. For something like that, I could see why, because you need the small footprint. And now that I've said all this, I might have to go get myself a 172nd, 176 scale tank, just see if I can still make one. 148 scale is normally about as small as I get. I really liked building that Pershing that Atlantis has repopped. And it was just, it was a fun, easy build, small enough, easy to work with. It has all the independent wheels and everything, but not a big deal. And I haven't really, I need to get started on that Monogram Panzer Mark IV, which is the one tank that Monogram has that seems to really still be selling well. Apparently, the way I understand it was, the reason Monogram got out of making a lot of tanks, particularly their M60, which I built a couple of times as a kid, is because the thing didn't sell very well. Now, it might have been because it was, the 70s and 80s and the whole Vietnam thing. I don't know. But apparently it was not a good selling kit, so they ditched it. But by comparison, the Mark IV Panther is still in production, so apparently it is still a good selling kit, which makes me think that, in no shock, a lot of it has to do with, with the subject matter. There's just not as much interest in building Cold War era tanks as there is in building World War II tanks, or at least that would be my read on it. Michael brings up that 20 mule Borax train. I'm almost certain that was promotional. I don't know who made it, but I'd be willing to wager that was a promotional. I would like to know who made it. If anybody knows, let us know. But when you have a big company like Borax behind you, you don't say no. The best thing that can happen with a lot of these companies, like happened with the Chrysler Turbine car for Johan, was that the company picked up the tab for making the molds, and I think even back when they had made that thing, that it was like $250,000. It was really expensive. My understanding is a really nice kit. It's been reproduced several times. Well, that was everything I had on my little list of notes. So, yeah, the Monogram M60 you're talking about is the kit. And my brother pointed something else out today. The tanks still seem to be under the Monogram name, but the airplanes are under the Revell name. But he actually scoured the Revell website today, and virtually every model he saw was actually a Monogram kit. And as I'm pretty sure you guys know, Monogram had acquired Revell and shut down the Venice, California operation. The reason that the Revell name ended up on top was purely a business decision, had to do with taxes, and I think that's probably because the losses at Revell would allow them to take write-offs. And the other reason was Revell had a bigger international presence. So those two things, it was really Monogram, and I've harped on this before. So when you see Revell, you're really talking about Monogram under another name, and so. And yeah, Claire, borax was the powder that went with the wash. It was a cleaning soap, and so someone actually built the Budweiser wagon. I don't know anybody that actually built it before. And now Chuck's talking about the Atlantis acquiring most of the old Revell molds. Old is the operative word. They got a lot of the old stuff. Revell still has a lot of the Monogram molds, and I'm still trying to figure out the deal with Revell of Germany and Revell in the U.S. I know they're different companies, and when Monogram got bought by Odyssey Group, and Revell got bought by the Odyssey Group, and later on they had the shotgun marriage. I don't know what Revell of Germany's, if they were completely independent or if they got pulled into that somehow, but somehow they managed to survive. And they have most of their stuff, I think, shot in Poland, and they make their own molds. It's a bit of a quagmire to figure out who controls what, because Revell US apparently has had some issues with Revell of Germany, and the guys of Atlantis, now that they have the old Revell stuff, they're having problems with the Revell of Germany, and I don't know what's going on with the Germans, why all of a sudden and so it used to be, if Rick and Pete needed 3,000, whatevers, yeah, they would just sell it to them, but now there's issues, and I have no idea what's going on, across the Atlantic that's causing these problems. Now, apparently, I understand there's some issues with the box art, and you have to understand that a company like Atlantis, although we see them in all the Hobby Lobbies and everything, they're not really a big company. I mean, it's Rick and Pete and some people out there in Deer Park working very, very hard to get all this stuff done, but they're doing 3, 4, 5,000 shots. So that's, you do the math on that. I mean, they got to work hard to keep the doors open. And I don't know what the rationale is with they're just trying to get money out of them, or if there's something else going on. But they do have those molds, and those things, you're going to probably see a lot that continue to reissue old stuff. And one of the nice things about a gigantic catalog like that is, of course, they can keep reissuing things for a long time. And now they're doing a lot more production with the guys. I think the guys are physically next door or close to them that are doing the shots for them. So that's got to be helping things out a lot. I know that the Snoopies, I got mine right up here with Dodad Bat, and I know the Snoopies have done well, and that's good to see. I don't know if I get their little updates when they're about to release new kits, and now they've got the clear parts for the old Revell kits. But now apparently, like I say, I don't even know if the Germans actually own the rights to the artwork, but I think they're claiming they do. I think I heard that somewhere. So there's that. And earlier today, my brother and I were rating model companies and who goes where. And Monogram was like Chevy or Ford, just a good solid in the middle. So were AMT and MPC. They were kind of right around the, Johann was sort of the Cadillac. Tamiya was the Rolls Royce, Airfix, Jaguar, Lindbergh line, Yugo, Aurora, Chevy Vega. But we were just kind of pinning, comparing who's what to what, and Hasegawa would be Audi, and so they think they're Mercedes, but they're not. And then you have that Zuikimura, however you say that makes those incredible kits. That, they're the Veyron on their Bugatti, and you pay for them too. But then you think about what you pay for a kit. People always say, what is the best value? Well, that's a subjective thing because value is based on what's important to you. If you like detail and a lot of accoutrements and all the niceties, then something like to me a kit has more value to you than the guy who's happy with monogram, who's just going to leave half that stuff in the box, not even going to build the interior. And that's not any kind of a judgment. What was the deal with Hasegawa versus Hasegawa Minicraft? Oh, I remember covering that a little bit. That was I think that was just a temporary crossover to get for what do you call it, market sharing. And you got to remember Monogram. Okay, yes, Monogram was Buick. You're right. Monogram was Buick. AMT MPC were Ford and Chevy. I like that. Yeah. But I don't think that I know a lot of people are actually happier with more basic kits because everybody has a different nature in how they build and what they're interested in. Nick Argento of Glencoe is adamant that his kits are for the casual builder who does a 2 to 3 day build and just wants to relax, have a good time. And I have heard of Poacher. I think it sounds familiar. Oh, by the way, I said Pookie only made the one kit out of Argentina. I went back and looked at the page again. If I read it right, they actually made that Pucara in 2 scales, like a 1 to 164 and a 1 to 172. So, not entirely sure. No, Andy's in a rough way. I don't feel at liberty to discuss his personals, but he's having some pain, and we all wish him well. And by the way, I want to thank everybody for the kind notes and messages. I know he watches the videos, and because he still has the energy to send me the occasional correction, which I'm very grateful for. But because for example, I was calling the Hawk Beta 1 the Beta I, but it was the Roman numeral 1, because somebody couldn't figure that out. I just hide behind being blonde. But we're all pulling for him and wishing him the best. He's actually, I believe, down here in Florida now. His sister is helping take care of him, and wishing the best. But he has been a great resource. He did the Runner for years, which was the newsletter, and he is a national resource, at least where kit model history is concerned. And I was thinking about something I think we talked about last time, how many people, that building models influenced the world we live in, because how many people became pilots or soldiers or race drivers or whatever, truck drivers, because they built them as a kid. And I don't think it's going too far to say that the kit model countries that have active kit model communities, if you look around, they tend to be, I guess I want to say the more productive country. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but more civilized. I believe that there are certain things. There's an old saying that you can judge a country by its jails, and I think there are other things that you can judge a country by, and one of them is that you look and see how active the creative and artistic community is, and model building's absolutely one in that category. And I don't mean the spaghetti on the wall and call it art creative. I'm talking about what I consider real art, or fine art, if you like. And I include in that, everything from painting, photography, model building, writing, novelization, screenwriting, video production, which is a huge, video production was always something that was just some kid with an 8mm camera, or some semi-pro trying to make an indie film or something. But there were very high barriers just for the cost of developing film. And now, thanks to these things, everyone is a potential Spielberg. And I'm waiting for someone to make an actual movie in a theater that's shot on a cell phone, and that day's coming. And it's like some people have been asking about. I've had several people ask me recently about the 3D printing. as John just pointed out, building for a youngster is very aspirational, and it is. You really fire up creative juices when something becomes tactile. I mean, you can do a puzzle of an airplane, you can draw a picture of an airplane, but to build a model, which is a 3D puzzle effectively, and then you paint it and everything, you get very zen with it. And but video production has gotten huge now that it's so easy. I mean, I'm cranking out sometimes 2-3 videos a day, and with some extremely nominal special effects, which just come in a package, you know. But yeah, let me real quick just profile you how my morning goes, so you guys get an idea. I've had some people ask for like a behind the scenes of Maxsmodels. Yeah, there's a cure for insomnia. But I get up. My wife and I tend to stay up kind of late, so and well past the average grown person's bedtime. And I built the Kingfisher model. Yeah, I always liked it. I gave elderly care to a man who had been the radio gunner airman in a duck and a Kingfisher. He preferred the duck, by the way. He said the Kingfisher was really underpowered. So I get up, and usually with no idea what I'm going to talk about. A lot of times, this morning I had just happened to have my cell phone and the video camera both in the house. That's why I tried that 2-camera thing, but I didn't have the lavalier mic with me. But this actually has better audio than my camera. But so I often tend to use this. But the cell phone video tends to go in and out. So sometimes. But when I use the lavalier mic, now that I got the battery in the right way, remember what I said about blonde? When I put the lavalier mic in, I get really good sound. But that thing's got like this 30-foot lanyard or 30-foot cable on it because I want to be able to get away from the camera. But I'm freaking stepping on it all the time. The thing just magnetically gets under my feet. So yeah, all the monogram pilots are they had one pilot say. So you could build German, Japanese, or American monogram. You probably had the same pilot. And he was always like this. You know, like, is he constantly talking on the mic, the throat mic? And he had a little spike on his back like a Godzilla spine that he would go into the seat back. Oh, man, how many of those did I build? So, but I get up, I have a little tripod, clip the camera to it. Usually I'll use a cell phone in the morning because the audio is better. And the camera and microphone are usually out in the tarbus. I'm still in my pajamas with my socks on, so I don't want to go walking outside because this is Florida. You never know when you step on a rattlesnake. I'll make my coffee, and usually an idea will pop into my head about, oh, there's something to talk about. And I'll just sit down and once in a while I'll just stop and redo it. Like this morning I stopped and redid it because somehow I just wound up botching the whole thing. But I'll be done by the time I'm done with my coffee, and then I'll spend 45 minutes or so getting the beginning and the end attached. And if I took any pictures to talk about or look for any pictures on the internet that I need for something I mentioned. So it takes, call it an hour. That's why the thing doesn't usually go up to about 11 or noon East Coast time. Is it takes me when I get up to shoot it and everything. And then, you know, have a light breakfast, run the family errands. We have lunch around 2, and then that's usually after 2 o'clock when I get out in the tarbus and start working. And I'll usually work for 3 or 4 hours out there, just depending on what we got going on. And, you know, I hate to say this, but every once in a while, you know, the muse just isn't with you, and you just don't feel like working on the models. So I'll play around on YouTube. By the way, before I go any further, another tangent. I've had a couple folks ask about the Air Race series. I am planning to get back to that. So that's not stopped. It's just, I have kind of overloaded myself. I got a stack of books right here. And the one that's really been great with the Air Race series is concerned, that was sent to me, is this one on the golden age of air racing. It's almost like an almanac, and it is just chock full of good stuff. The next one I'm planning to do is on the women in air racing, and I'm going to give you a little spoiler, a little trailer here, so to speak. Given the relatively small size of the air racing community in the 1930s, there were a surprising number of women involved. I mean, given that it was the 1930s and all of the social conformities of the day. And you had Pancho Barnes and Jacqueline Turner and Louise Thaden and even Amelia Earhart. You had some people that most people have never heard of that were actually was it Blanche Noyes? You see, even I have trouble remembering. That were actually winning races, and sometimes against not just against women, not just the powder puff derby. They were winning races against men, and they're all but forgotten to history because they didn't have the publicity machine. I'll bet you every one of you knows who Amelia Earhart is, and unfortunately, she's probably best known for having disappeared. But and most people in aviation all have heard of Jackie Cochran, all right? So and so those two, and if you've ever seen The Right Stuff, a lot of folks are familiar with Pancho Barnes. But all three of those people are well known because of media connections, financial connections. There's and when I tell you the story behind Pancho and Jacqueline, who knew each other, by the way, they were contemporaries. They not only raced against each other, even Yeager's book talks about it. Those two couldn't have been more different for more ways than you might think, and we're going to get into that. I don't want to spoil it now, but when I read about their relative backgrounds, I was like, did not see that coming. And Amelia Earhart, who by her own admission was just an average pilot, but her husband, George Putnam, had the resources to, and was a great promoter and was able to keep her in the public eye. But then you've got some really fantastic pilots. How many of you ever heard of Louise Thaden and or Blanche Noyes? And these were winning air race pilots who were real trendsetters. So many people have heard of Jackie Cochran when it comes to the 99s, but a lot of people have never heard of like Nancy Harkness Love. And history can be unfair. You have people that accomplished a great deal and really deserve to be remembered, but they become side notes, and people who simply had better PR machines, it is what it is. And John's absolutely right. It's marketing. And one thing I will say in Amelia Earhart's defense is that, to the best of my knowledge, she never ran around claiming to be the greatest. She was the first to do many things, but she never ran around claiming I'm the greatest thing since pockets. I think she was aware of her limitations. My understanding, she had some concerns about that around the world flight. It was, believe it or not, the famous Hollywood pilot Paul Mantz that had taught her to fly and to use a lot of the equipment on the airplane. But that's been extremely well documented, and she was written by the winners. This is true. And I'll give you a classic example of that. I imagine if you watch this channel, most of you history geeks to some degree, you've probably watched Lance Geiger over at The History Guy. Now, I already knew this, and I had surprisingly just read up about it recently. But he just did one on the Mayaguez incident. And that was just a fiasco. But the president's approval rating, Ford's approval rating went up like 20%. And he'd shown the world, politically that, look, we're strong. You do something to us and we'll go get you. But if you actually read the details of the thing, it was an absolute tragedy. And just reading a couple of comments here real quick. So absolutely right. It's marketing. It's how you spend something. It's how you sell something. And probably one of the greatest achievements. There are two achievements from the 20th century that pretty much push all other things in the 20th century. So, let's make that three achievements. One, the lunar landing. Okay. And yes, they did happen. Two, the Normandy invasion. And three, the atomic bomb. And everybody, people talk about, the most expensive thing in history ended World War II. Yeah. What they don't mention is that the B-29, which, by the way, monogram, I forgot, my brother reminded me today, monogram makes like a 1/48 scale B-29 with almost 3-foot wingspan. I don't know where you're going to put something like that. But if what I have read several times is correct, the B-29 actually, developing that airplane actually cost more than the atomic bomb that it dropped. But everybody talks about the atomic bomb. It was, the most expensive thing, prior to the war. Yeah. I'm like, maybe not quite, but that's what everybody thinks it was, and perception is reality. Nigel brings up that Susan Oliver was a very active aviatrix. She had a commercial ticket. She died very young. I think she smoked heavily. I believe it was lung cancer. But you guys might remember her as Vina, the Orang, or the girl with Christopher Pike in the original Star Trek. And she'll be Susan Oliver to you, but she'll always be Vina to me. There were actually quite a few Hollywood types. In fact, Tom Cruise has been talking about how this new Top Gun movie is his love letter to aviation. Him, Travolta, Harrison Ford, all big-time pilots. Clint Eastwood is a rated helicopter pilot. I don't know if he still flies, but he's a rated helicopter pilot. I think he has an A-star. And well, TG, what was her name? Because if it's Velda Ben, she gave me my instrument ticket. And she knew a lot of them, and she definitely preferred Nancy Harkness over. She was not a Jacqueline fan, and we're going to get into that when I do the video on them. It's not going to be an in-depth bio if you show, but it's going to be quick profiles. Pancho or Pancho, I keep saying Pancho, it's Pancho. Pancho was Michael Dorn, Worf. He owns a T-39 Saberliner. He had an F-86, and he's a big aviation guy. Pancho was in a lot of races, and she owned the mystery ship that I did the little history on. She actually owned that airplane for a while, owned it about. But I don't think she ever won any of the races. I couldn't find a single race that she actually won. She participated in a lot of them. I don't know if she was trying to win or just started to have a good time or just couldn't win. But, of course, we all know that the GBs and the Waddell Williams were winning, and the Solutions, the Matty Lair designs, were pretty much winning most of the races, but they had different categories. And I think the racing pilot I'm the most impressed with, and I'll have to do a bio on him, is the late Steve Whitman, who... Whitman Field, where they have Oshkosh is named after. It was named after him while he's still alive. And it just, I mean, you look at those planes he made. I mean, he made his own racing planes, and he won with them. And he's apparently a very good pilot, because there's footage of him at the races, and he's hugging that pilot. I'm like, my God, they were a different breed. Yeah, you want to race, kid? First thing you do is build your own plane. Yep. Oh, yeah. Travolta's a big guy. He has a G2. He had a G2. He had that 707 for a while and got rid of it. Qantas, I think, took it off his hands. And Mustang, yeah. I drive topless. But you look at some of these airplanes, and I wouldn't even get in half of these. Well, I wouldn't fit in half of these things, but there's just some pretty wild stuff out there, and I physically would not fit in most of these things. I mean, the pilot's almost laying down on his back; he's so reclined, and you see some of these things in museums, and you've got to be kidding me. You went and flew that thing on purpose? And you look at the people, and you realize how small these things are. Oops. That's a biplane. Those are people standing behind it, so the airplane actually looks bigger. About the size of a coffin and shaped the same way. That way, if you crash, they just clip the wings off and drop you in the hole. I mean, good God. Yeah. And by the way, we just lost one of the Anheuser, the Sky Typers. They just had a T6 crash. The guy was just taking off and flying to the show, and I don't know if the engine quit or what, but supposedly, but that was just in my Yahoo News feed today. And Sky Typers fly T6s, and I actually caught one of them lives down in Spruce Creek. I caught him taxiing out one day to go do his daily routine. They practice, every day. I have no idea what happened. They just said the thing took off, normal takeoff, and then it turned over and went in. And some, who knows? Oh, it's a little Spitfire. Oh, that's cool. They had the 2-seat Spitfire. A guy in Florida back in the I guess early 90s had a 2-seat Spitfire. I don't know where it is now, and it was a legitimate factory-made 2-seat trainer, and it was a Spitfire they'd modified with 2 seats. Kind of a bubble canopy in the back. It was a Razorback, but the guy in the front canopy had a normal canopy. The guy in the back had, if I remember correctly, a raised bubble canopy so the instructor could see a little bit. But the guy was giving rides in it, and Jim Moser, who's sadly passed away, but he was the Extra 300, which is an aerobatic airplane. He had they were giving rides to the people who worked at the airport. And I remember they took the secretary up and gave her a ride, and that Spitfire jumped off the ground. He was operating that thing off the little 2,000-foot runway at St. Augustine, 2,200-foot runway, no trouble. That Spitfire operated comfortably out of 1,500 feet. I'm telling you right now, Mustang doing that. But the Mosier was like 6'6", 6'5", big guy, and they were gonna. He got in. And they literally, even without a parachute, sitting in that little bucket seat, he was too big. They couldn't get the canopy shut. He was just physically too big to get in the Spitfire. And so he didn't go for a ride in it. And I was like, well, if you ain't going to, well, I didn't work at the airport, so no one asked me, but I'm not bitter about that at all. But I wouldn't have fit in that airplane either. And I looked in there, and apparently the word ergonomic is not from jolly old England. That airplane had the worst laid out cockpit I have ever seen in my life. For one thing, and some of you guys may have seen this in the movie, Spitfires and the British aircraft of the era, they had a horizontal compass. It literally set horizontal between the pilot's knees under the instrument panel. So I'm sure that was comfortable. But now, a Spitfire doesn't actually have a stick nor a yoke. It kind of has this weird in-between thing. On a stick, you pull back to go up, forward to go down. Well, the Spitfire has that. And a stick, you go sideways to bank the airplane. Because the Spitfire cockpit is so tight, there's no room for the stick to do that. So it goes up the pedestal goes up about halfway, and then the stick, which has a round handle on it, just pivots on the top of the thing. And you've probably seen that in the movies. Which, by the way, if you've ever been in the cockpit of a Hawker jet, they kind of do the same thing. In fact, the Embraer I fly does the same thing. It goes up halfway and then just the top pivots like this. But the whole thing strokes back and forth. So, yeah, you get used to it. But this was just because the cockpit was so tight. They were made for 5'7" pilots wearing big furry jackets. And, of course, the Spitfire has a little door you have to close on the side. Well, excuse me. The throttles and prop mixture and carb heat and everything on the left side. Okay? And the cockpit, I've been in a Mustang, and I was like this in the Mustang, so it's not exactly roomy. You get a radial engine plane, you often get a little bit more room, but the throttle mixture, the engine controls are on the left side. Okay, well, nice and tight, just a wrist action to operate them. Problem is, you got the right hand on the control, the left hand on the throttle, but the landing gear retract lever is over here, and it's a big black hound. They had to and run like 90 degrees, and I'm like, so you either switch hands or you reach over. And in an airplane that responds like that, which explains why so many Spitfires are doing that on takeoff before the gear goes up. The guy's fighting with everything to get the gear up. And then you got the flap lever and everything else. I'm kind of like, boy, guys, come on. They had knobs and dials all over the place. And there was just no rhyme or reason. I guess it's just wherever they had room in the cockpit. So my understanding is the Messerschmitt is, although more logically laid out, it's every bit as tight, which explains why some of those guys never got out of the airplanes. I mean, you're trying to basically get out of a metal suit. I sat in an A4 simulator one time, the A4 Skyhawk, and I was in street clothes, dressed like I am. I didn't have a helmet or a survival vest. And you close the canopy, which sat right on top of my head. Now, it's possible the seat may have adjusted, But the A4, which is a brilliant Ed Heinemann design, I realized I couldn't turn my head and look this way because it was up against the canopy. And when I just turned my head, I could not see, because each side has a pedestal of knobs, dials, and switches that go back behind the seat. And I wound up giving instruction to a guy named Reisinger, who was an A4 pilot. He goes, "Oh yeah, you learn to do all those knobs and dials by braille. You just learn where everything's at. You don't look, you can't see them. That's where there was room. Now the cockpit was logically laid out. There was just no space, and that's why John McCain got injured so bad when he ejected. It's because it's such a tight. Even with the canopy gone, there's so little room for you to clear. A lot of guys got the Argentine pilot that ejected out of his A4 that the British captured. He was seriously injured. I think his leg, because it hit the canopy bow on the way out. And so those airplanes, they're made for an anorexic 9-year-old girl. And it's just, the thing is, the pilot's kind of an afterthought. A big airplane that's known for a notoriously tiny cockpit, this gigantic airplane, P-38. They made this airplane to go fast and say, hey, Kelly, we got to put the pilot in there. Oh yeah, let's put a little seat in that pod in the middle for him where all the guns are. We'll just hide him behind the guns. And you watch that video with the late Jeff Ethel flying that P-38, and you realize his elbows are up against the windows. I mean, it's just, there's no room in those things. I did hop in a couple of radial engine planes. They had a little bit more room in them just because the round fuselage and everything. But so if you ever build a model of, any of the World War II fighters, and when you look at it, the pilot looks like he's oversized because all you can see in the canopy is his head. That's about right. You want to know what it's like to fly an ME-109? Just take a square fish tank, put it over your head, because that's about the way it is. Now, you talk about the roll rate. It's funny you should mention that. Mike had told me that the problem... Now, Mike Mishat talked to it. Now, I'm talking about Mike Reisinger, the pilot. Mike Mishat, the artist, had mentioned in his video, one of his videos recently, that the A4 had the 28-foot, I think it was 28-foot wingspan, because one of the conditions was two airplanes had to be able to pass each other inside the aircraft carrier, I think an Essex-class carrier, which had like a 60-foot wide deck. So they, he made them 28-foot wingspan so they could, without folding wings, they could pass each other. Genius little airplane. I mean, amazing design. But the... and if you build a model of an A4 and you can see more than the pilot's helmet, he's off scale. But Mike flew the TA4J, and really, A4 had more room than TA4? Okay. But Mike was talking about that he was flying a thing in turbulence, and the wings, because they're so short and there's no weight out there, they have no inertia. You fly a big 4-engine airplane with all the weight of those engines hanging out on those wings, and it kind of stabilizes the plane even in chop. But you get a tiny little fighter jet with everything's in the center of the plane, there's little stub wings sticking out there. There's no inertia, so that they can turn really quick. The problem is you feel every bump, and you get into turbulence, and it starts banging your head. And he's telling me, we wear those helmets to keep us from injuring ourselves when our heads get banged against the canopy. And you look at pictures of a lot of those things, and you see scratches on the insides of the sides of the canopy where their heads have been banging against the wall. It's one thing when you know a maneuver's coming and you brace yourself, whereas another when you get hit by turbulence, and you get slammed over there. Yeah, I was at a air show in Tallahassee, and they had an A7 Corsair 2 on display, and it was a Navy pilot flying it. And I remember looking in it, and I was amazed how big the cockpit was compared to all the other fighters. The A10 had a little bit of room in the cockpit also. Not, I wouldn't call it copious, but then I got in the F-16 simulator, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. There's a reason they got HOTAS, hands-on throttle and stick. You can't freaking reach anything. I mean, you can reach everything. You just can't move. And is that seats reclined back, 16 degrees or 30 degrees, whatever. You're like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. You don't get in an F-16, you put it on. It should come with a belt buckle. I jumped in the F4 sim, and it was tight on the shoulders, but once you got in the canopy, there's some room down below where it fattened out a little bit so you could reach the switches. But all of them are snug. And, oh man. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I got to fly in some trainers, Stearman's, PT-22s. Um, but the Kevin brings up the Cessna 150, and I've got a lot of time instructing in 150s and 152s, and I wasn't as big as I am now. But theoretically, in a Cessna 150 with full tanks and a handkerchief, I by myself gross the airplane out, and I don't mean just by looking at it. The 150 was made to be an economical trainer, and I used to hear a guy say that the Cessna 150s probably killed more pilots than any other airplane simply because it's too easy to fly. It doesn't really do a good job of preparing a pilot for what's out there. Now, if the pilot's only going to fly a Cessna 150, then that's not a problem. I'm just putting something up here to give you guys a little change of scenery here. And shouldn't that be up there? There we go. And let's see, where's the... There I am. Oh, it's me. So, wait a minute. There we go. So, by the way, on those 50 calibers that were broken, not to panic. The model comes with 2 sets of 50 caliber barrels, one for the belly that I didn't use. So I'm going to replace those barrels with the other 2. So I'll still have proper 50 caliber barrels sticking out there. And so anyway, the Cessna 150, I remember when the football player Don Meredith was a paid spokesperson for Cessna. He got his pilot's license at a Cessna Flight Center. The CFCs, all the major companies have them, Cessna Flight Center, Piper Flight Center. I don't know if Beechcraft ever did that, but the whole idea was give us, back then it was like $3,000, guaranteed we'll teach you to fly, and then when we're done, we'll give you a credit towards buying a new Cessna if you buy one. And back then, a brand new Cessna was, 18, 20 grand. It was within reach. So that was one of the ways of marketing the airplanes, but they were competing with all these cheap used airplanes. So I fly the Cessna 150s doing instruction, and some of my students were fairly sizable too, and we'd go out with half tanks because we're only going out for a 1 hour lesson, so we had 2 hour fuel, and half the time we're in the traffic pattern, so we weren't going very far. But it was comical to watch some of us taxi out in those things. I mean, it looked like you just poured 2 people into a teacup. And I routinely had to fly my arm around the student just because there was no room for us to sit shoulder to shoulder. So I tried to back my seat up just a little bit and put my arm around them so they could focus on what they're doing. And of course, well, it would be the left arm. But it was particularly awkward when I had a female student because this is Florida. It's hot and sweaty, and I don't care how good your hygiene is. By the second, third flight of the day in an unair conditioned airplane, you're starting to, stink. And I'm always trying to keep my hand out because I don't want to accidentally touch the girl if I'm, just something. It's just trying to be, keep your hand balled up in a fist and moved out of the way. And of course they're usually so focused on what they're doing that they don't, but it was just, let's just say everybody pays their dues in different ways. That's how I paid mine. But I wouldn't have given up that experience because apparently flight instructing, I didn't realize this at the time, but I learned real quick, is actually considered one of the more hazardous jobs because, you're taking an airplane up and giving the controls to someone who's never flown an airplane before. And students will, how can I put this? Just about the time you start to relax because they're getting pretty good, they find a new way to be stupid. And I'm sure I did the same thing to my instructor, so I'm not, trying to act superior. Who was it that told me the other day that the problem with making things foolproof is that idiots are incredibly ingenious, or something along those lines? And the way we used to say it in the army was, you make something idiot proof, we'll invent the better idiot. And I flew with one girl who was, anyway, we got in the airplane. This actually happened to us twice. And a Cessna 150's got no reserve power. I mean, we're taking off about 200 feet, and my door popped open. It's just the latch was like, well, I'm under pressure. I cannot hold it. And when it did, the airplane immediately went to a skid because the door opening up, it only opened up a couple inches, but it works like a rudder. So, of course, she had to apply opposite rudder. So we effectively had speed brakes out, and the plane just started to settle. I was like, no, don't do that. Don't. And I'm, open the window, put your elbow, boom, got the door shut. Okay. And and the other time it happened on her side. And I was like, yeah, that's one nice thing about the Piper Tomahawk. The Piper Tomahawk, you sit down in the thing, and the doors, your hips are not against the doors, because it has two doors, but you step down into the airplane and the doors shut and they latch up top also, so that can't happen. The problem with the Piper Tomahawk is it's got that plexiglass canopy, and we're in Florida. By the way, I don't think there might be a kit of a Piper Tomahawk, but I don't ever think I've seen one, but that's one I'd like to get because I used to fly the thing. Yep, the mighty Tomahawk. And by the way, if you guys, the Piper Tomahawk is a little T-tailed Piper trainer, PA-38T, and not to be confused with the P-38. And it is famous for the tails wrenching off a couple of them. And I was doing deep stalls with my instructor, and I heard this, whoa, 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 like when you're shaking a big piece of tin. I'm like, what? And I look back there, and the T-tail is doing, well, not that, but it's like, I can see the T-tail vibrating. Yeah, that's enough of this. And he's like, well, I just want to make sure you don't get yourself in a stall. Not to worry. Now, I do need to offer one little tidbit about the Tomahawk. It has a slightly undeserved reputation. Most people have hurt themselves in an airplane were doing something they shouldn't have been doing. The early ones did have some guys that managed to get themselves in trouble, so they wound up putting up brace plates on to strengthen up the tail, because all the weight's up on the top of the tail with that horizontal stab up there. But the Tomahawk flew the way it did on purpose. They wanted you, unlike the Cessna 150, Piper wanted the airplane to train you to apply something more high performance. So the Tomahawk's faster than a 152. I think it's got longer range. It has independent gas tanks. It doesn't have you see, the problem with the Cessna 150, it's almost dumbed down too much. You have two fuel tanks and a high wing, but you have a both selector. So you really have to manage your fuel other than don't run out. You don't have to balance fuel or anything like that. It's just all and you don't even need a fuel. There is a mechanical fuel pump to keep the pressure up, but if it conks out, just gravity will feed the engine enough to keep you flying. And whereas the Tomahawk has electric fuel pumps and checklists and all that stuff, and a little bit more complicated. It also comes in faster. You have to be more careful in the flare. And it was all done to prepare you for higher performing aircraft. And in that regard, it succeeded. I know people got their tickets in Piper Cubs back in the day when all you had to do, the examiner didn't even go with you. He just watched you shoot a couple takeoffs and landings, gave you your ticket. Hell, there wasn't even a written test until the late 60s, I think. But we also had a lot of accidents back then because people were so poorly trained, which is why the curriculum got tougher. And the Tomahawk, actually, if you've got one that hadn't had the snot beat out of it, it's actually a pretty good little airplane, depending on what you want. If you wanted just an airplane for you to scoot around in super efficiently, real economically, you didn't have to go blazing speed, that could handle basic IFR, and it's just a decent little airplane for a Tomahawk's fine. It's faster than a 150. Of course, if you're going to be down in the deep south or the hot part of the country, you do have that plexiglass canopy, whereas the 150s have the high wing, which gives you some shade, and both windows open in a 150 for cooling. So that's not a small, that ain't, as the man said, that ain't nothing. But you do need to pick the airplane for the mission. The 150 is such a simple airplane to fly, and yet people still manage to tear them up and get themselves killed in them. So, but I remember flying a 150 after I had been out of general aviation for a while. I've been flying turboprops, and I got into somebody lent me theirs, and I jumped in it. I'm at the end of the run. Man, is that all the power this thing ever had? And I remember being over the middle of Virginia State Forest in the middle of the night, instrument conditions with a student in a straight Cessna 150 with one navcom, and I'm just thinking, we're like 4,000 feet. Just he's built. It was Rising, the same guy that flew the TA-4J. He was getting the civilian tickets added, and and I'm just thinking we're going from like Gaithersburg to Richmond on a night cross country IMC, and it was really marginal VFR, but out over the state forest where there's no lights, it was really instrument conditions. And he's over there just focusing on the instruments, 4,000 feet, this heading, talking to control. And I'm looking down, I can sort of see the trees down there. I'm like, if one of those 4 cylinders, one of those spark plugs, anything, suck a valve, anything, we're going in those trees. Even if somehow we come down in one piece or survive it, which in a 150 with full flaps set for best glide is actually pretty likely, they're going to find us. We're going to have to walk our lame asses out. And so I'm looking at the chart just going, well, south would be the best direction. And I'm like, I just remember looking out there going, there's got to be an easier way to make $12 an hour. Or safer anyway. So I guess like everybody, paid my dues, did my time. And I wouldn't give those experiences up for anything. But I'm glad they're behind me. And the other thing about a 150, though, it's got a spring steel gear, which is virtually zero maintenance. And whereas, well, actually, the Tomahawk has a spring steel gear also. Piper finally got away from oleo struts and went to a spring steel gear since it was a fixed gear. And that got rid of a big source of maintenance. The reason I brought the thing about the 150 in the trees, an instructor in Tallahassee was checking out an airline pilot in a 150, and they had some bad gas, and he just started sputtering. They immediately turned back for the field. They didn't make it. They went full flaps, and this airplane, I think, had 30-degree flaps, and just trim for best glide, and they didn't make the air, so they just flew it into the trees at about 55, and they went into the trees, came to a stop, and the airplane wound up swinging like this. It never made it to the ground. They were both okay. They banged up. I think Dennis might have got a cut elbow and the other got a cut head, or vice versa. But that was a couple of contusions and cuts, or the sum total of their injuries. The fire department had helped them get down out of the airplane. The owner of the plane went up with a ladder and got his radios out so nobody'd steal them. And the next day, the vines broke and the thing dropped to the ground. Not very hard, but so there's that. At the flying flight school. And you just can't buy memories like that, but then who'd want to? So I did find a model. There's a company that makes a model of a Piper Pawnee. I used to tow gliders in a Pawnee, but the Pawnee kit, all the sellers over in the UK, and they're on eBay, and I was like, I don't need to spend $40 on a model that big, especially when I got a stash like that that's crying for attention. Tomorrow I get to repaint the B-25 engine nacelle. Traitor. And I got just about 2 shots left in that can of. I'm using a rattle can on this in a lot of areas, and just enough to clean up those engine nacelles. So tomorrow, hopefully, I get the wings on it. I don't think I'll finish it tomorrow, but and for those who didn't know this, the Piper Pawnee, the crop duster, is essentially a Super Cub with a low wing and the pilot sitting on top behind the hopper instead of in front of it. And you look at it, the fuselage, the wheels, and everything, the wings are all Piper Super Cub parts. But the best part they did was they put that 235 engine on it, or 250. That really made an airplane out of it. It came out with a 400 horse called the Pawnee Brave, but eventually everything went over to yes, I did. I saw that. And John was talking about the full-scale Aero model. Still one of the greatest planes that never was or should have been. And I like to think there's one sitting in a hangar waiting on cold alert somewhere. But I still hold to my belief that the CF-105 Aero, what doomed it was the minute the U.S. Air Force took an interest in it. That's just my personal belief. I have nothing to back that up, but I think the minute the U.S. Air Force said we want that airplane, every military defense contractor in the United States started putting pressure on every senator, on the president, on everyone else to kill the Aero, and which would explain. I mean, it was kind of the best thing that happened in the U.S. Not only did we not have to compete with it and get to sell our own equipment to Canada, but a lot of their engineers came down to the United States and definitely added a great deal of expertise to our talent pool. So, not that America would ever do anything like that. We're the good guys, right? Giggity. Yeah, there's a lot of aero components being discovered in lakes up there. They're finding the tests and everything. It was really interesting that since they didn't have the big high-speed wind tunnel to shoot the thing on rockets and get the data that way, that's a tough way to collect data, but that was really innovative. And what truly floors me about the Aero is how much technology the Canadians are able to squeeze out of the thing on such a tight budget. I mean, that was genuine ingenuity. And oh yeah, I watch pretty much everything Dark Skies. I find a few little problems here and there, but it's still fun. The guy's got the perfect voice for that, and he should be narrating the X-Files. I think a lot of us tend to watch the same video channels, Chieftain, Dark Skies, the Indian Idell, and those guys over at Time Ghost and World War II, and a bunch of others. I have now, of course, Dark Skies. One problem he has, he doesn't always have the footage to match what he's doing. Part of him wants to call me, like, dude, just consult me. I'll help you out. We'll find some footage together. But a lot of guys who are doing this professionally have to pay for it. They can't just take stuff off YouTube like I do, because I don't care if I get demonetized. I'm not monetized. But they have to use these banks that they have to pay for, so they just try to, because it's really more of the story. They're just, sometimes they have the correct pictures, but every once in a while I catch a few facts that he's going, yeah, but you know what? He's got the general gist of it down, and he's just fun to listen to. It's relaxing. It's like listening to a recording by Morgan Freeman. He could read the phone book and it would put us all to sleep. It's just such a smooth, mellow voice. But I'll probably be doing a couple of things in the future in more of a podcast format without me appearing in front of it. Now, part of that is because, I mean, the morning coffees are there's a lark, whatever pops into my head. And sometimes I get a little carried away with it, but I try not to, because I want to get out and do stuff. But I do enjoy the process. The evening ones, I think it's fun to kind of talk to you guys face to face from the Tarbis, so to speak. But a lot of the other stuff, like the histories now I'm doing, I don't even, sometimes I'll just do podcast format, because it's much, much easier, for me just to set up this microphone I'm using right here, Barranca Tower, and just sit here and then they da-da, and it just makes life a little bit easier, and then I can get the pictures to go with it. Either case, I have to write a script, but one of the things that I like to do is get the pictures in front of me and kind of use them as my guide. But it's a little bit easier that way. Saves me from switching so many files around and pulling SD cards and creating files and everything. But anyway, so what have you guys got? The Iroquois engine. Yeah, that's another thing on the CF-105. The Iroquois engine, or Iroquois, however you say it, that engine really scared a lot of engine manufacturers, because there was some pretty novel technology in it. And although I think, didn't the Iroquois go on to be used in other equipment? Which, by the way, don't forget, the Aero was supposed to use, I think it was a French engine that they didn't wind up making. And at first that was a big setback for the Aero, but because it pushed Canada to invent the Iroquois engine, it actually, in the long run, probably turned out being the best thing for them technology-wise. I heard about Coterre Models got some of the wingnut. I heard they got some of the wingnut wings, molds or staff. But anyway, I hope those things stay in production, because they're awesome models. Action other man, this is probably what I'm going to do for retirement. My wife is very supportive of this channel for a lot of reasons. Oh, was it Rolls? Oh, that's right. It was Rolls Royce. Rolls Royce. I'm sorry. But my wife is very supportive of this because, you know, keeps me out of the bars, keeps me at home. And that's, and she helps me with a lot of this stuff from time to time. She's got the astronaut for the man maneuver unit to paint the face. So that's going to be Mr. and Mrs. Max's models build. And I was just working on the MMU today. That thing did not have the best fit. I had to use a fair amount of putty. Because the parts are so big, you get some fairly big seams in it. And it actually made me wonder if it had the right part in the right place, but it did. But I mean, it's not a big deal. They're flat slab-sided parts, so they're easy to putty up. Hi, Pops. I'm glad you're able to join us. Heck yeah, man. I ran out. Only had one tonight. Yummy. Good. Maker's Mark. Raymond says I must catch the last flight out of... I have no idea how to say that. Potomnik Shoops? Shoes? I give up. Yeah, you might start seeing a little bit of her work added into my videos. So she was very flattered by a lot of the response and everything, and she was she appreciates everything you guys had to say, and she's just so she might she's got her own channel, but she might put some stuff on here from time to time. Yeah, and the Revell AH1 is got some issues, and I don't know about the Aurora, the old Aurora Cobras, but the box art on it is horrible. And one of the reasons I never bought one of those Aurora Cobras, I mean, box art not only sells, it repels. So that's very much a double-edged sword. Again, as John said, marketing. Yeah, the astronaut is basically built. My wife's going to paint the face, then I'm going to finish assembling it. I was working on the MMU earlier, and there's a little bit of painting that has to be done on the MMU, just a couple of red stripes. The rest of it's decals. They look like they're usable. I might have to trim them out, but whenever but she's got other stuff on her table ahead of the astronaut, so she'll get to it when she gets to it. Good night, TG. In fact, I'm going to be signing off here in just the next few minutes because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. And John, if you want to Zoom, shoot me an email. And I will bid you guys a good evening. Before I go, I don't have anything new to report. I go to work Monday. So, and real quick, I think it's a 4-day trip. There it is right there. Just real quick. Tick tock. Okay. Yeah, it's a 4-day trip. So, switch glasses here. I'm all excited because this trip begins and ends out of Jacksonville, so I don't have to travel to Orlando. Score. Go to colorful Newark. The Monsters Venue, they're back in LaGuardia at 6:59. What I'm looking to see if there's going to be time to do any model building on the road, or 8:40. We get to Atlanta at noon, so I might have some time there. Dark 30. I might toss a model in the bag just in case, but who am I flying with anyway? Oh my gosh, I don't have a crew assigned. Holy crap. Well, I guess I'll find out who the crew is when I get there. Probably going to be some reserve people. But anyway, so there may not be anything till Thursday night or even Friday. So I'll try and put some content out tomorrow just because, get some stuff wrong. Thought about doing a couple of things in advance and then, scheduling to put out, but I'm like, the whole idea of this thing is kind of off the cuff and sort of, for lack of a better word, fresh. It's fresh off the vine. Yeah, you're right. I have so many kits waiting to be painted today. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. I'll leave the comment stream up for a few minutes so you guys can chat amongst yourselves. And want to thank everyone for tuning in. We had a great show, over 100 people. I can't believe the success of this thing, but I'm glad you guys are tuning in and having a good time. It's all in good fun. Once again, I want to thank Scratchy for the T-shirt. Sorry, I remember it's a christening, so it's now a real Maxsmodels T-shirt, and he put my name on the back of it. I don't know if you can see that or not. No. Oh, good Lord. Okay, guys, take care of yourselves. I'm signing off now here, and the clock is running. Want to thank everybody once again, and you guys, as always, muddle on.